Fortunately, somebody made a big mistake. Water resources, actually it was a very clever mistake, which ended up being really stupid. Water resources, somebody in water resources came to the city and said, I got a way for you to get out from under them. What you do is you put a little pump station right in front of the water treatment plant on Salmon Creek, and you pump water from the river directly in front of the treatment plant. What that would allow you to do is, once we approve your plan, you don't need to get access to your upper point of diversion, because you can bring water right into the plant, and you can perfect your right on both of those points of diversion, and you're done. You've gotten them out of your hair. There's nothing more they can do. They are legally dead. It was brilliant. There were only a couple of problems. One, it was salt water. They were taking water out of the estuary. And I don't believe, the superintendent of public works, I mean, years later I said, didn't you test that? And he said, yeah, but it was clean. I mean, it was good water. I said, you must have done it at a low tide. Because when the tide comes in, that estuary is completely filled with salt water. And also, the upper point of diversion had a small problem involved with it. That it was on private land that the city had bought an easement from a timber company, but they had to get across about 100 feet of Forest Service land in order to access it, which was the problem with why they couldn't just get in there and just put the pump station in. The Forest Service, because they weren't crazy to have this happen, said, well, fine, I mean, we will grant you an access permit, but you must do an environmental analysis. Nobody wants to do an EA. And the city particularly didn't want to do it, because essentially, I mean, the burden of proof is on them to show that their action was not going to cause any harm to the river. So this idea of going into the estuary was perfect for them. They could, get away from that requirement. Well, with all of this pissing match going on, what we were looking for was an entree to the courts. And we had to wait for an action. What we were actually waiting for was for the city to get their plan approved, some way or another, and then try to access the river, at which time we would say, okay, we're going to district court. But this thing of changing their point of diversion, it says in the law, you may change a point of diversion. They added a point of diversion. And we said, no. When you change something, you give up the thing that you had. No. Our change is we're going to add it. So we went to Water Resources with every dictionary we could find, from legal dictionaries, and we said, look, change means you get rid of the last one, right? Change means, change. And they said, dictionary? We don't need no stinking dictionary. Change means add. We had a great defeat, and we also had entree to the courts. That was a challengeable action. So 5 of us, me, Andrea Scharf, Ron Taves, Paul Engelmeyer, Dyke Dame, and Water Watch of Oregon, ended up suing the state. I never really expected to be in that situation. It's a little daunting, because the Attorney General is going to be defending them, and Water Watch, which is a service agency dedicated to keeping water on the rivers, had a great attorney, which we depended upon entirely. I had to write half the brief, and then she actually, made it legible. And we were headed toward district court to bring an action against the state for essentially not obeying their own rules. Once we got into court, of course, we could discuss anything we wanted. So we figured, okay, we'll get through this one little thing. Part of getting into district court involved going through an administrative hearing, that we had to go in front of an administrative law judge and clear that. And if we weren't satisfied with the decision there, then of course we could continue with our case and go on to district court. And I thought, boy, talk about a colossal waste of time. I mean, we are going to be sitting trying to convince an employee of the Water Resources Department that their rules are being badly interpreted. And what's the likelihood of their finding in our favor? Well, we showed up, we dressed up, we showed up, and they showed up, and the Attorney General showed up, and we stated our case and laid out what we thought were a reasonable set of demands. And the judge said, we're going to go into negotiation here. We want you folks to work this out amongst yourselves. That we want you to come to some kind of a negotiated settlement so that we don't have to continue this as a legal matter. And we said, terrific. And we went out to lunch, and they went out to lunch, and I swear I wasn't eavesdropping. But when I came back into the building, the Attorney General was yelling at the city and telling them that they were going to accept whatever we offered. Well, I was in shock. We went back into the room, and the city said, we'll sign. Huh? And we signed a negotiated settlement with the city, which involved a whole bunch of requirements, like that they bring their water system efficiency up to 85%, that they do a curtailment plan, which is based on stream flows, that as the stream flows get lower, that the city starts to lower its demand, that it write a new permit, that we have like 7 or 8 demands in there. And they said, fine, we'll do that. Only then did I discover what was really going on. And it wasn't about Yachats at all. This whole thing, this inability of the Water Resources Department to do the right thing despite the fact that they knew what it was being driven by Salem, Woodburn, Medford, Grants Pass, Klamath Falls, all who had the same situation as Yachats. They were looking for more water because the water that they had was being leaked into the ground, and they didn't want or couldn't fix their pipes. The difference with them was they had lots of lawyers. And this was going to cause a real problem for the state, because the state had very little money. They couldn't fight these folks. If we were to get into district court and to get the ruling that we wanted, which we expected to do, and I think the state probably expected we were going to do, that ruling then could have been applied to virtually all of those cities in the state. This was chaos for the state, that they just couldn't countenance that. So the solution was, keep us out of district court, which is why the Attorney General was yelling at the city of Yachats. They dodged a bullet. Actually, when I found out about this, I was thinking, we could just refuse this settlement and just go ahead, and keep on pushing it. My friends looked at me like, go ahead. We signed, and we did what was necessary to get out from under what had happened. That kind of was the end of it, to some degree or another. I mean, we had gotten what we wanted. We had gotten what we thought was a reasonable settlement. There was a new permit issued, which was tied to our settlement, and said that all of those negotiated articles had to be satisfied before the city could take any water. And actually, the city that I'm talking about was the city of the mid-90s. We're living in an entirely different city now. I mean, they got a superintendent of public works on board who almost immediately started fixing all the pipes. The last I heard, it was, I think he was talking about like in the low 90s efficiency for the distribution system, which is, although it's not unheard of, that's terrific. I mean, we thought that we were being unreasonable asking for 85%. And that cities never have 85% efficiency of water delivery. Well, City of Yachats did it. And they've done all kinds of other things, including fund our water quality monitoring, much to the chagrin of a few people.